fit is the business model required to entice a customer to buy your product. But when we think of product market fit, it's not just enough to think about the variables that will entice a customer, but if you can, think about what factors will pull the customer as well. So you're also trying to create something that has resonance in the mind of the customer, but if you can also think about what factors or elements will pull your product towards the customer, then you're much more likely to have success and repeatability in your business model. When you address a market that really wants your products, and if the dogs are eating the dog food, you can screw up almost everything in the company or you'll succeed. Conversely, if you're really good at execution, but the dogs don't want to eat the dog food, you have no chance of winning. Andy Rashlev coined this term, and I think it's important for us to take it with a pinch of salt. But fundamentally, what he's saying is that if you are building a product, you've got incredible UX, UI, you've spent a lot of money, but you are not meeting the needs of your customer. And really, it's in a market that doesn't need the solution that you're trying to provide, then you're not going to succeed. Your product's not going to go pretty much any further. However, when you're good at execution, you build a product that maybe doesn't appeal, but at the core of it, it's functional, it works well, and it actually meets the needs of the customer, and it's in the right market, then you probably have a better chance of succeeding than most. When we're thinking of product market fit, one of the things we're really trying to do is convert an art into a science. Building a business initially tends to be like an art. It's a bit of a slapdash everywhere. But what you really have to think about as founders when you're looking to build a business and you're looking at product market fit is that, is the product you're looking to build or bring to the market, is that a solution that the market needs? And this is something that you really have to think about. You have to have domain or industry experience. And even if you don't, at least have a board or people that can help you understand if you're actually providing something that's necessary for the market. Conversely, I think founders also need to introspect and reflect on if they themselves as founders are the right people to execute on this problem. And even if as a founder, I'm not the right person to execute on the problem I'm looking to bring to the market, if my co-founders have domain experience or they have industry expertise, it can make up for the lack of knowledge in the industry that I'm looking to disrupt or the product that I'm trying to bring to market. And I think that's where you have to become really good as a founder, which is even if you don't have the competencies, surrounding yourself, whether it's through a really strong board or a very strong co-founding team, to make up for the weaknesses or the skills that you have. But this is a threefold test. It's about having found the product fit, but then more importantly, product market fit as well. And so the aim of the game really is, how do you go about validating the assumptions that you have currently and going forward in the future? So when we look at our founder, Jeff's product market fit story, what Jeff highlights is that every time you ship a product, it's a bet. It's a bet that customers need the thing that you're building. And you know that you didn't get it right the first time, but with iteration, ultimately, you'll find something there. What I love about what Jeff highlights is that product market fit is not a static process. I think I've read in a lot of places and spoken to a lot of founders, and I think a lot of people tend to think it's static. You know, once you've achieved product market fit, this is it. But it's fluid because your customers' needs are constantly evolving and changing. And if you're not constantly meeting your customers' needs, it means you could potentially unlock product market fit, but you could equally lose it in the same sense. Once you figure out that you've built the right thing, customers want it now, so your job is to harden it, make it excellent and operationally sound. So even when you do find product market fit and you build your operations around it, you have to be customer obsessed. And so working at Twilio, I've really seen that in terms of our approach, which is constantly doubling down on the customer. And you see it in a lot of other companies. You see it with Amazon, and their mentality around day one. And basically, you have to be customer obsessed because product market fit is a fluid process as opposed to a process that is static. So now we're going to look into how do you go about validating product market fit. And bear in mind, when we say validate, this could either be pre-product and solution, or you actually have a live product and solution. But it's a good exercise for you to get into, to think about, are you asking the right questions? But more importantly, are you building something that people need? And I think that's really the aim of trying to find product market fit. So Rahul Vohra founded and sold Rapportive to LinkedIn. He founded Superhuman, which was the fastest email experience in 2015. And he wrote an incredible blog, if you haven't seen, on Superhuman's product market fit engine. Just to highlight, Rahul had experience as a founder, but he built a product historically that gave him really great insight into founding Superhuman. So he had some form of relative domain expertise. As Rahul was building Superhuman, he began to wonder that if you could measure product market fit, then potentially you could optimize it. And if you could optimize product market fit, then it meant that there's actually a systematic way you can increase it until you've achieved it. And so he really turned this process into a science by anchoring product market fit around a metric or a leading indicator to help him and his team really identify if they were taking the necessary steps. So now we're going to look into the product market fit engine. So Rahul meets Sean, and Sean Ellis runs the early growth, runs growth in the early days of Dropbox, LogMeIn, Eventbrite, and he highlights or coined the term growth hacker. And what Sean discovered is that actually there's a science and a leading indicator to achieving product market fit. So Sean highlights that if you could ask users how they would feel if they could no longer use the product and measure the percent who answer very disappointed, this is what would potentially unlock product market fit. So in 2017, Rahul asks his customers how would they feel if they could no longer utilize Superhuman. And of his customer base, only 22% would be very disappointed. Notice the 26% who are not disappointed. And I want to highlight that 26% would not be his customers at all. And the 52% who are somewhat disappointed are your customers who are on the fence and they're a bit ambivalent. And what you're trying to do is convert more of those on the 52% to come into that segment in the top, the top right, which is basically very disappointed. So Sean Ellis highlights that 40% is the magic number. Companies that struggled to find growth almost always had less than 40% of users respond as very disappointed, whereas companies with strong traction almost always exceeded that threshold. Given that we know that very disappointed marks the spot, you need to ask your users how they would feel if they could no longer use your product. The group that answers very disappointed will unlock product market fit. I think I remember a really good study, which was that in 2011, I think Hiten Shah asked around 711 Slack users how they would feel if they could no longer utilize Slack as a product or a solution. And I think they got between 51 to 57% of customers saying they'll be very disappointed if they could no longer utilize Slack as a product. At that point in time, Slack was generating around 500K in revenue. So when they're going to have conversations with VCs or angel investors or wealth funds or anyone who's looking to invest, they've got compelling metrics that shows that not only are people demanding their product, there is actually a pull for the product. Therefore, they have achieved product market fit and they've got something to build upon in terms of the KPIs and the metrics. Essentially, with this exercise, what I'm trying to get you to think about is your customer. You need to survey your customers if you haven't, and if you currently do, it's really about asking the right types of questions. So how would you feel if you could no longer utilize the product is the type of question you need to ask your customers. And really identify if they would be very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed, because within this triad of sub points, really, what you're beginning to see are those who are your customers and those who are not your customers. You then want to ask follow-up questions such as, what type of people do you think would benefit most from the product? What is the main benefit you receive from the product? And how can you or your team improve the product for your customers in mind? The aim is to really segment to find your high expectation customers. You want to focus on the very disappointed segment and identify what personas are very disappointed. By unlocking and delivering value for your high expectation customers, what you're doing is you're getting a lens into your most discerning customer. And what happens early days is when your customers have a high expectation and you're really building for them, they almost provide you with a free marketing and free ROI, because they are not just your customer, but they're going to evangelize your product in the market. And word of mouth still plays a massive role in the way a product spreads, the way a product gains its virality and essentially growth when you're really trying to save money early days and scale your business, especially around the marketing lens as well. You then want to analyze feedback. You want to answer the important questions, which is what makes people love your product and what prevents them from loving it as well. And I hope what you're beginning to see is, as we're asking all of these questions, we're building a roadmap, essentially. We are distilling all the pain points, all the problems, all the pros and cons to double down on what your high expectation customers want. You then spend 50% of your, the feedback on your roadmap, on what they love, and then 50% on what the bottlenecks are and what's holding them back. And I think, this point links back to what I said earlier, which is you never settle and you're never done. I think even if you're pre-seed, Series A, Series B, or you IPO, you're always in this process of interacting with your customers, talking to them, trying to understand how they're experiencing your product. And you're always going to be looking to improve the product for your very disappointed customer, because they become your high expectation customer. They have a longer customer life cycle value. They're willing to spend more. And I guess from a business model perspective, you really don't want to be in a position where you're spending more money from a marketing perspective on trying to acquire customers, as opposed to really having a product that meets your current customers' needs and having a high customer retention. Churn is really the enemy. And when we look at that and we think about not settling, it highlights why product market fit is so important, but a fluid process. I think when you appreciate it as a fluid process, then it makes you really then think about doubling down on meeting your customers' needs as much as possible. So when we recap on Superhuman and their product market fit engine, we can see the 5 steps to validating PMF and building a business are really focusing on who is your customer, doubling down on who that customer is by talking to them and surveying them. You then want to segment to find your high expectation customers or super fans and evangelists. Analyze feedback to convert on-the-fence users into super fans, because I think that's a major part of the process as well. Build your roadmap by doubling down on what customers love and address what's holding the others back. What are the bottlenecks or potential challenges that they're having? And then again, finally, we come back to this repeating the process, finding more passionate customers or converting people into passionate customers. And so it's an oscillating cycle that doesn't really end, but the more you're able to do it, that flywheel then enables you to find growth and scale, essentially. So in order to find product market fit, you need to do things that do not scale. So before you think about growth or looking for money and investment, really try to use these opportunities to understand who your customer is, understand that you're building the right things that meet their needs, and don't focus on scaling. I think early days pre-seed, you shouldn't be, having too much issues around, does this scale, as opposed to, do I actually meet a customer's needs and expectations? We can see that in 3 quarters, Superhuman was able to go from 22% of customers who were very disappointed with not being able to use Superhuman to 33% and then 58% in 3 quarters. And within a year, this is just a massive result for them to achieve, which actually shows that not only were they able to go from 33% to 58% of customers being very disappointed if they could no longer utilize Superhuman, they smashed through the benchmark. And this just enabled the founder and his team to have a more compelling go-to-market strategy, to have a lot of customers who need and wanted the product, and thereby producing better quality conversations with investors when they're looking to raise capital, because you can then start to speak to how are you going to allocate the capital once you've raised the necessary funding to take you to the next level. So as we alluded to earlier, it's about surveying your customers, thinking about what's the best channel in mind. We know that customers now expect the right message on their favorite channel at every stage of the customer journey, anywhere in the world. And we know that 66% of millennials prefer to be reached by SMS, messaging, or social media applications. Given that I think we receive around 46 notifications daily on average, what you need to be thinking about is there is a variety of different ways you can be engaging with your customers. It doesn't have to be through the traditional, Survey Monkey or Google Forms, send an email, please can you fill out this survey for me? Think about capturing voice data. Think about focus groups, forums. Think about meeting with your customers. I mean, maybe not one-to-one currently, but definitely doing so over a workshop or one-to-ones virtually. Just by leveraging a variety of different ways of engaging with your customer, you can actually tease out so much more richness as to if your product or solution actually meets their needs, but what are the real reasons for the bottlenecks and the problems that they're having. And that's why I alluded to on this slide, for example, what voice data do you want to collect, if that's potentially another avenue, just given the richness of voice data and how people express themselves when they're speaking, as opposed to filling out a survey. And now we're going to look at what is the product market zeitgeist. I think before we move on to here, I just want to highlight, for example, so Twilio recently acquired Segment, and I read a really fantastic blog post by one of the co-founders of Segment about his experience and journey to finding product market fit. And just to really highlight it at a very high level, he highlighted basically that when the team were, shipping products in front of customers, customers would be like, oh, this is interesting, this is okay. They were never excited, and they were never really keen in the early days of when, Segment was being built and they were really trying to develop the product further, until he was finally able to unlock a problem where the customer was just super elated, very excited, and they literally went from 0 to 100 on the back of the call that they had. And I think that's what product market fit looks like. Product market fit is not people saying, yes, we like your product, or this is interesting, or, I feel like I could use this. It's when once you found that magical moment, essentially, you're being pulled. You and your team are being pulled now because you've unlocked something of tremendous value for the customer. So when we look into product market zeitgeist, fundamentally, it's the unfair advantage that separates winners from also-rans. And what the product market zeitgeist is when the product resonates with users, not because it's better, but because it feels extremely culturally relevant, or socially relevant rather, at that particular moment in time for a particular group of people. Users may not love your product, but for some reason they want it to win. So when we think of product market zeitgeist, we think of, for example, cryptocurrencies and exchanges such as Coinbase. These really have gained tremendous popularity, but it all came on the back of the last financial crisis in 2008. And then you have, this whole renaissance taking place around clean meat, with, companies like Beyond Meat and so many different startups that are trying to move us to plant-based products or vegan-based products. You have, obviously, driven by regulation, cannabis, which has really taken off in the US and North America, with the likes of Ease, Green Rush, and Baker, which is more a regulatory push, because once regulation allows it, startups are now innovating in that space. And then on-demand everything, which is just driven by, I think, just a collective movement or a zeitgeist towards access as opposed to ownership, with regards to transportation, food delivery, and a variety of different other services. So the thing to think about is that the zeitgeist is constantly changing, and there's a fundamental reason why you should never settle. And so when we link it back to product market fit, given that your customers' needs are constantly changing, and given that, society as a whole is also undergoing these changes, product market fit can never be static, because all it takes is a zeitgeist such as COVID to come about, which can fundamentally change how businesses operate and the manner by which things are done. So when we think of zeitgeist, it's, you know, an invisible, intangible force that defines really what's shaping the world around us. If we take Zoom, for example, in December 2019, the peak number of participants in Zoom was 10 million, and it had a valuation of 16 billion. A few months later, it's grown 30x to 300 million users. And as of today, the valuation of Zoom sits around 80 billion. This is even incorrect because it's even scaled much more since I last got the numbers for this. But this is an example, like a really clear indicator of what zeitgeist looks like. It's a mix of circumstances, obviously internals, you know, a great management team, a team executing, and obviously finding product market fit to drive their products to new heights and scale adoption. But you can see how the external factors and the circumstances that we found ourselves in have really driven the adoption and the usage of the product. And also, you can see how the externals caused the team to innovate further. So Zoom has capitalized heavily on the work that they've done, taking advantage of the pandemic, and just a variety of different measures that have seen us staying at home and not moving about as much as we used to. So despite the external factors, they've capitalized on this and continue to do so as a result of the zeitgeist. Darcy Kulikan at A16, Andreessen Horowitz, which is a VC fund, he highlights that the death of most startups is indifference. Put simply, most companies fail to launch because no one cares, not the users, employees, investors, or the media. It's death by 1,000 strokes. I don't think you need to care too much about investors or the media caring about your product early stage. But I think if your customers don't care, then clearly you don't have product market fit. And if your employees don't care, then clearly the vision is not compelling enough for them to care about, or you've got the wrong type of team. So, you know, these are the things you need to think about when we think of not only the zeitgeist piece, but your capacity to achieve product market fit. You need a capable team, a competent team, but equally you need to ensure that you have customers who care about what you're building and you're meeting their need more than anything fundamentally. So when we look at reflecting and introspecting on product market zeitgeist, naturally we know hindsight validates all and timing often matters, but it's fundamentally crucial. The best explanation for economic success usually has to do with the interaction between two factors: social influences, who likes what and when and how noisily, and intrinsic merit, whether the product is actually good. I think we have a lot of founders who are building incredible products, like really amazing products, but a lot of people don't need them. And a lot of people not only don't need them, but even if they do use them, they don't use the products frequently to necessitate it being a product that people would use in their day-to-day lives. So really it comes down to timing and also social influences to an extent as to how quickly a company can scale as they're looking to, you know, really build out their customer base and customer engagement. So just a few takeaways before we wrap up. I just hope you use the product market fit engine as a template to help you achieve that 40% mark of users or customers who would be very disappointed if they could no longer utilize your product. I think the most important thing I take away from this is never settle. Constantly iterate, elicit feedback from your high expectation customers. Any opportunity you can get to be in front of them, please try to do so as much as possible. And then think about the most optimal mediums of communication by which you can collect survey data from your customers and really think about how you analyze it and the way you distill the feedback from your customers. And lastly, reflect on the zeitgeist and the social influences that are driving or stalling your startup from achieving product market fit. And just before we wrap up, I just want to finish off with something that Jeff Lawson highlighted earlier this year, which is really founders should follow your customers because that's where the truth of the business is. Jeff went on to add that even if consumers are cutting some of their spending, they will always pay for a valuable service upfront. And that's a way to get customers to pay to get the company going. And I think when everything's said and done, what will always move the needle is being obsessed with your customer and creating solutions that actually meet their needs and drive value for them. I think if those three things are not being satisfied, it is a really hard journey to achieve product market fit and then to really retain your customers if you are lucky enough to find PMF at that point in time. And if anyone doesn't know about the Twilio Startups program, we're a dedicated team of both business and technical experts that live and breathe startups. And we really are looking forward to supporting you as much as possible to grow faster, to scale better. I think our focus has always been around communications and customer engagement, and would love to provide comprehensive support, networking, and resources to not just the Twilio and Twilio SendGrids products, but just to help you understand how to leverage your communication channels, how to think about customer engagement as you're really looking to scale your business between pre-seed and Series A. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time today, everyone.
Thank you very much, Frank, for this valuable content. I think there will be lots of questions coming. I have also some questions. Francisca has asked, how do founders segment satisfied customers to meet the demand on product market fits?
So Francesca, this is a really good question. I would say the way you do it is, for example, find out, as we said in the workshop, find out the percentage of customers who would be very disappointed if they could no longer use your product. So that would be the first step. Then we know, for example, let's say you've got 45% of your total customers would be very disappointed that they could no longer utilize your product. We know that of that percentage, that's your satisfied customers, right? Which is about 45%. Within that 45%, given that they love your product and they've responded in that manner, you resurvey them again, talk to them again, to then understand who are those people within your customers who are satisfied. What are the personas? Are they from a younger demographic, an older demographic? What is their propensity to spend? Would they be willing to spend more on your product? That's how you then segment and distill to understand the different types of personas. Because, for example, if that within that 45%, we're just saying hypothetically, if we find out that, it is people of a demographic between, let's say, 18 to 25, and then you then ask them a follow-on question, which is, would they be willing to spend more on your product or solution? How many times do they engage with your solution, weekly or monthly? You then know, actually, you need to double down on that persona and on that segment a lot more. So I think that's the way I would process it, which is quite systematic. It's quite scientific. And then if there are any gaps in your process, you can always go back to see, actually, maybe we didn't profile that type of customer, or we didn't ask that type of question, which helps you really cover your bases as you're looking to find product market fit. I hope that answers your question, Francesca.
So another question from Adam. How do you measure product market fit for the products that haven't been released to the market?
That's a great question. And that's one of the things that I think the survey is really good for. And bear in mind that, as I alluded to, was it Adam? Sorry. Was it Adam? Adam. Yeah. As I mentioned Adam as well before, this is a template. So you feel free to build on top of that. But if you're, for example, you're trying to create a product, or you're still in an ideation phase, you can still do this exercise. However, the caveat is the idea or discussing what something is very different from its form. So for example, you tell me about an idea that you're looking to build, you give me a question or a survey, I fill it in. Based on what you've told me will be, I give you a certain response. When you actually build the product and you survey me again, it may not meet my expectations. And so what happens, Adam, is that you're going to have a situation whereby if you do this exercise with an idea or a product that's not being brought to market, your customers will give you a response, but you're equally going to get a very different response when you build the product and we get to engage with it. And then what's really interesting at this point is there's going to be a dissonance between your product when it's live and the theory of what you said it would be. And then what you can do is actually work on basically filling out or fleshing out the step gap between why did I as a customer love the idea of what you were building, but I do not like maybe the product you brought to market. So that's one of the things you can do, but there is a variety of different stages you can do that. So you can do it in your ideation stage. You can do it when you're doing an MVP. You can do it, for example, when you're scaling and growing. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that this process does not stop. So across the different stages of your business as you're scaling, this is a habit you need to constantly get into. And then obviously, if you've got a really strong team with analytics and you're really able to quantify the data, that data then gives you a lens on what you need to be focusing on, what is priority for your product roadmap, and how do you really get to a place whereby, you know, you've got customers who love your product, you're able to retain them, and then leverage all of these good things to have better quality conversations if you do happen to look to raise investment further down the line.
So another question from Mohammed. Let me read it. I am Ibda from Live in ID, Indonesia. I wanted to ask, what should we do when the product we make is not really needed by the user or the market?
Good question. I think short-term answer would be scrap. You know, if you were building something, your customers have said, we do not want it. And your customers are like, let's say the percentage who are very disappointed is like 5%. Clearly, you know, just scrap the product. A lot of people would say pivot, but I would only pivot, for example, we said in the workshop, 40%. You want 40% of customers to be very disappointed if they could no longer utilize your product. And let's take this number and be realistic. It's not 40% of 10 customers or 40% of 20 customers. It's more like 40% of 50 people, 100 people. If you've got a really small, you hit that mark, which is 30% or 35%, then the question mark comes up, which is you've built something compelling. You may need to pivot at that point or really double down on what the issues are. If that number happens to be 5% or 10%, you've completely missed the mark. And I don't believe you should pursue something if your customers don't want it. Scrap it with speed. Don't invest time and resources into it and go and do something else. I think even for my learning, my personal learning as well, when you're building a business, you can't force your assumptions as to what you think your customers would like. Like, if I like this, I believe my customers will like this. That is a very dangerous place for any founder to be in. It is a science because you are engaging actively with reality. So you're really trying to understand, what do your customers want, and constantly ensure that you're building for them. If, you know, they respond that they don't need it, or you get a very low percentage of people who aren't passionate about the product or not disappointed about it, I would say if it was below 30%, I would scrap and completely do something different again and take the learnings rather than over indexing time into building something that people don't really want.
Another question, Frank, is does the same strategy work in B2B business, business to business, business services? How do we understand product market fit over business to business services?
When I designed this workshop, it was in mind for B2B companies, because B2B businesses really have this problem. I think they suffer from this problem a lot. B2B companies, people always enjoy developing B2B businesses because I guess, you know, you get a big contract, you can lock in customers, you know, you've got the revenue and the KPIs, which is all great. But again, the problem is when you are building a B2B business, the same principle would apply, albeit maybe for the customer that you're building in mind, or maybe your customer, although your customer is not a person per se, but rather an organization, it's the same principles, the same concepts. So I don't think you should ever get caught up on whether it's direct to consumer or B2B. Like, existentially speaking, I'm building, I don't know, a voicemail tech startup that automates your voicemail. and I'm looking to get into a B2B contract with Vodafone. That's my customer. If what I'm building does not alleviate Vodafone's problems or doesn't make their life easier or doesn't add value to their customer base in any way, I'm in the same problem. I'm in the same situation. And so when you're thinking about this, although it's a bit harder to maybe test, a lot of really good B2B businesses do have a small subset of B2B customers they can test with, who are open to, you know, trying their products and their solutions. And again, I would say if you're building a B2B business, don't worry about people copying your business in the SaaS space. Get your product in front of your potential B2B customers and let them test it, let them validate it, and see if there is value there. If there's not, and you can afford to pivot. Otherwise, you know, don't waste too much time, because B2B, you know, people are developing things very quickly, and they innovate. They would innovate around any potential novelty that you have to your business model. So always get your product out there as quickly as possible. Test with your potential customers, whether there are other organizations, other teams, put it in their hands and let them use it. I remember when Stripe, I think Patrick Coulson and his brother, when they started Stripe, I think I was reading somewhere, I think for the first 100 to 1,000 customers that Stripe had, they realized some customers found it a bit hard to get their head around. They literally got their laptops, sat with them, and these are like maybe whether it be enterprise or growth customer accounts, and showed them how to use Stripe. Like literally show them by sitting with them how to leverage it. So I think that's the same way you need to think about it, whether it's B2B or B2C. It's that type of mindset you need to get into. Let your customer have the product and engage with it. I think that's absolutely critical. Is that Alexandria?
This is a great example.
Yeah. With regards to that, I think that's a great example. I think I was even talking about it prior to this workshop today. If you are building a B2B product, like let's assume you're holding down a job and you're building the product on the side, right? I think it is absolutely crucial that the product is free. I think make it free for as long as possible. Get all the feedback. Get your customers testing the product, trialing the product, talking to you about what doesn't work, what does work. And actually, when something is free and it adds value, there's a bit of stealth behind that, because what happens then is that if you're actually building something that they need and it's free and you can see how you can add potential add-ons to it, if you were to then charge them for the add-ons, they would naturally be willing to pay. It would be so easy to convert them into a paying customer. Let's go back in time and think about, for example, the likes of Spotify and how they started. You know, when we look at Spotify's business model, I think they were churning so much cash because the freemium was absolutely massive. That made up such a big proportion of their customers. And then what do we see that's happened over time? I think over the past 10 years, their paid accounts now account for more than their freemium subscriptions. And why is that? Because they enabled people to taste the product, engage with the product for long enough that they got lock-in, both B2B customers and B2C customers.
So another question, if you have many market competitors, then how do you measure product market fit? And then how you create a good customer group? Ismot Jahan asked.
So if you're in a space where there's lots of competitors, again, you can be really, I think that's also a very great space to be in, because there is the market has defined that there is product market fit. So you're not creating something novel and applying it to the market. The market is telling you there's lots of competitors in this space. So if there is any type of business you really want to emulate and do better than, I would really ask, if you can identify who those customers are in that space, ask them what they like about your competitor. Like, find out what are the key elements of your competitor's value proposition that they enjoy, that they utilize. And again, when we talk about this survey, we're talking about numbers of 100, 200, 300 customers. If you're then getting feedback from customers that these are the key reasons why they like this competitor X, Y, A, B, and C. What that then does for you is you can sit back and be objective and ask yourself, okay, is there a need for me to bring a solution to the market, given that these are the things that customers enjoy about my competitors? And then ask yourself as well, are you innovating enough to necessitate you building a business? Or are you going to add a feature? If what you're bringing to market is a feature change, then your competitors can always innovate backwards and provide the same solution, which is of no benefit to you. So you really, when you get that feedback, you have to ask yourself objectively, am I building something that's compelling, that necessitates a new product coming to market in a space that's heavily crowded? Or am I in a situation whereby, being really honest, this is a feature change whereby they can all innovate backwards and provide the same type of solution? So that's how I would think about it. And also ask customers how competitors are really leveraging the product and gain insights into, is there value for me building and executing a potential business in this space?
Another question, sometimes we develop a solution for a business, but how can we expand to other businesses who have the same need, but not as much? We need a few other features to our product maybe.
So when you've provided a great solution for a business, the business is utilizing the solution, but you're looking to, let's say, sell to other customers. And again, this sounds maybe a bit more B2B in my mind. Customers will only, in most instances, ever buy if they hear really great customer stories. If you're trying to sell in a B2B situation to other customers, you're just like every other type of SaaS business out there. They need to hear really compelling customer stories. And if you can, clearly it sounds like the other businesses or similar businesses don't have a need or a use case for using your product as much as your current customer is. So it's really trying to highlight or unlock what are the different areas in potential customers' businesses that you could derive value for. Potentially maybe doing a workshop with the type of customer you have in mind. If you can do a workshop with them to talk to them about better understanding their business and then where your business can provide value or additional support, those tend to be the types of conversations or the approach that will unlock value and unlock potential customers that are a bit differentiated to leverage and utilize your product. But if you create a software solution and it's just worked for one customer, but you're trying to sell it, you're selling it to, I don't know, an insurance company, but now you want to sell it to a law firm. The product works in a similar way for these two types of businesses. However, they're going to use it in different ways. If you're not able to highlight the value add of the law firm leveraging it as opposed to the insurance company, they're not going to utilize it. So having really strong customer stories, doing workshops, finding out who people are in the target business you're looking to sell to, who you can put the product in front of. Because again, as we've said, they will be the people to evangelize the product for you as and when you're not in the room, most importantly.
We are in the EdTech, and I think I now understand how we can find a niche we are looking for. My question is, how many notifications must be sent to a customer a day to always keep them engaged? I think also Alexandria has a question regarding one of your slides about Superhuman has got a kind of engagement of 58%, I think, or more than that.
No, definitely. So that's a great question, Alexandra, and it comes down to A/B testing. So you're going to have to A/B test really. So it comes down to a few things. First, obviously, you're in EdTech, and then you have to ask yourself, what type of product or solution are you building? For example, if Uber are sending me notifications every day via SMS about getting food, that's quite annoying. So you really have to understand the type of product you're building. And again, do A/B testing and test with your customers to see the frequency by which they want to receive the communication. Do they want to receive communication on a weekly basis, fortnightly basis, monthly basis, hourly basis? Good practice for communications would be enabling a preference center. Create a preference center, that gives your customers control as to when they want to opt in and opt out of communications. That's pivotal. But more important than that is A/B testing. Like, if you're creating a product whereby there is urgency attached to the product, so healthcare, on demand, anything, then SMS works well in tandem with email, because email will audit the frequency of what's happening. So when I order an Uber meal, I get notifications in the app, I get an SMS, but they also tell me via email that the delivery has been completed. That's one way of doing it. But if your product is not urgent, for example, it's more, for example, a shopping experience or an e-commerce experience, for example, then I think it can be done maybe via email and occasional SMS. So you're going to have to really do A/B testing to see the frequency of when you want to send out emails and SMS or WhatsApp communication, but then stepping away from that, understanding your business as a whole and trying to understand how and when will your customers need these notifications and the frequency of doing that. But whatever I say right now and whatever you might think, these are just assumptions. So it's only through A/B testing you'd be able to validate and test what works. And again, giving your customers a preference center to opt in and opt out of communications or change the frequency of the communications they receive.
Frank, we have a couple of minutes left. Before we close this session, thank you very much for your valuable experience and also valuable content. That was very, for myself, I got lots of things that I learned today. Additionally, should you share the SendGrids startup program a little bit detail that I already shared, we already shared also with our startups in our acceleration program, that they can be also apply for the your program, which will be giving them free of charge lots of valuable services. And additionally, Frank has been giving office hours next week. So we will be hoping to share Frank's schedule for the startups. I think you may be able to find also Frank's valuable time to ask one-to-one sessions with the office hours. And so last two questions, please. Tell us about the startup program, SendGrids startup program, because it is very valuable that we are using as a Startup Istanbul. We also shared with the startups in our program that will be, I think, getting value out of that.
No, definitely. Thank you so much, Burak. So just to add on what Burak said, the Twilio SendGrids startup program, essentially what we're trying to do is really support you around, your communications and your customer engagement. But equally, we don't want you to just use the perks for no reason. It's really thinking about your communication channels. So we know that, for example, email is the most ubiquitous form of communication. Like 85% of people still prefer email. We provide email. We provide up to, the credits you receive is worth up to $849.95 worth of email credit every month for a year, which equates to around $10,200 of email credit for the year. And you also get a one-time $100 Twilio credit. Now, I do appreciate it is a bit lopsided. However, this is obviously because of the integration that has taken place. So we can only provide at the moment $100 one-time credit. But when you think about, the credit you're receiving, just think about, your emails. So if you're sending out transactional emails, this would be great for you. Marketing campaigns, again, this would be fantastic credit for you to utilize. SMS is good to test. And I think the most important thing is when you're utilizing our products, it's giving you an insight into what it's going to take to scale, right? So even if you didn't stay with Twilio SendGrid, this is not a proposition that's by force. We are not trying to lock you in, But what it does help you understand is between your journey, when you're pre-seed and Series A, you're going to be thinking about how many emails you're sending out for your customers, how many times you're sending them SMS and WhatsApp. All of these things have a cost attached to it. So really, this is a great time to leverage our tools and the credits for free to actually better understand your cost model, as well as you're looking to engage with your customers and optimize your communications. Apart from the perks that we provide, we also provide a variety of different workshops. So we work with our partners who are VC funds, accelerators, incubators, other technology solution providers to do workshops around different aspects of the startup journey. We'll be having a few workshops that are a bit technical in November. So if anyone's interested, please do check out the Crowdcast link. Come and attend, you're all welcome. You can also watch the recording at your own time. And we're going to be doing a workshop, I think, towards first week of December around sales, which is really, again, another fundamental piece, especially if you're looking at B2B sales or B2C sales, sorry. Again, just having that understanding, getting that advice from people who are, world-class at sales in B2B and B2C, I think is great exposure for you as founders. But that's the type of stuff that we provide. So we provide both an educational piece around workshops and office hours, as well as the credits. But just so you know, once again, to reiterate, the credits, it's not by force. It's at your discretion whenever you want to sign up for the program. And again, when you think about the credits, think about communications, customer engagement, and just think about leveraging it to help you hopefully identify who your customers are. So, that's fundamentally what the Twilio Startup Program is. And we work closely with Burak and the Startup Istanbul team to support all of you, more importantly, to get to where you need to be and scale and grow and fundamentally really, add value to your customers who are leveraging your products.
Frank, thank you very much for this valuable webinar and an hour long, and much appreciated. We are going to share Frank's also office hours for the next week. I think lots of startups will queue on the office hours. Hopefully they will get one. And please stay safe and healthy. Have a great night. And all the founders have a great week this week. And we will be always contact with you for the upcoming webinars and also one-to-one sessions this week as well.
Thank you so much, Burak. Honestly, it's been a massive pleasure. I want to thank you, everyone in the Startup Istanbul team. Thank you, everyone, for attending and for your time today. It's fantastic to see everyone coming from all over the world. Much appreciated. I hope you all stay safe wherever you are. Stay healthy, stay safe. And I look forward to seeing all of you, hopefully sometime soon in person and at more virtual events as well. So thank you so much, everyone. And Burak, massive thank you.
We are always pleasure to host you in Istanbul after all this pandemic situation goes away. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good evening.
Take care.